Sakai Yonosuke's mornings are far from ordinary. As the chilly wind slips through his open window, stirring him from sleep, he barely reacts when he notices a familiar presence around him in bed. Before he can even say anything, she wraps her arms around him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. For anyone else, such an event might be shocking, even exhilarating. But for Sakai, it is just another Tuesday. With a resigned sigh, he gently pries her off before she can escalate things further into absurdity. Minamo, his childhood friend and the embodiment of a textbook rom-com love interest, naturally deflects all blame onto him. She playfully insists that if he ever bothered to fix the window, she wouldn't have to use it as an entrance in the first place. Flashing him a mischievous smile as well as other things, she slips back out the way she came, leaving behind the usual whirlwind of her presence. As he watches her disappear, Sakai mutters under his breath that this is precisely why he cannot think of Shio as someone of the opposite gender. The thought lingers in his mind as he sighs, calling her an idiot before heading to the bathroom to brush his teeth. Or at least that is what he would have wanted to say. Frustration creeps into his thoughts. Why is she so reckless, so carefree around him? She should be more cautious, especially around someone like him. After finishing in the bathroom, he changes his clothes and prepares for the day. Just as he is about to leave, Minamo reappears, strolling into his room like she owns the place. Sakai sighs and informs her that he isn't ready yet. Ignoring his protest, she grabs his arm and grins, asking if he is ready to go. He pulls away, telling her to keep her distance, but as always, she doesn't listen. Sakai regards her with growing exasperation. She treats him as if he is just another one of her female friends, completely disregarding personal space. Does she not see him as a man at all? The thought gnaws at him. He knows he is guilty of looking at her with what he considers perverted eyes, but he can never let her find out. If she ever realizes the way he truly sees her, she would undoubtedly hate him, and the mere idea terrifies him. Minamo, however, has her own frustrations. Despite all the time they have spent together, Sakai has never once looked at her as more than a childhood friend. Does he truly feel nothing for her, or is he just pretending? His indifference is beginning to wear on her patience. When he offhandedly tells her that she is becoming a burden and that his feelings aren't what she might expect, a rare silence falls between them. She tries so hard to get closer, yet nothing seems to break through. For a moment, she feels disheartened, convinced that he simply doesn't care. But just as quickly, her determination resurfaces. She refuses to give up, not until she makes him blush, even if she has to force it. With a clumsy but practiced fall, she grabs Sakai with her, making sure he falls face first into her. A certified rom-com moment. This is carefully concocted after researching through his rom-com books. However, it seems as if none of it is effective. Sakai's eyes widen in surprise, but before the moment can escalate, he quickly helps her up and asks if she is all right. Sakai, however, brushes himself off as if nothing has happened. Calling her clumsy, he turns away and tells her to hurry up. For a moment, she hesitates. Then, instead of simply following him, she reaches out and grasps the back of his jacket, holding onto it tightly. Hearing his name in her voice, he turns back to find her wearing an innocent expression, claiming that she has sprained her ankle. She pleads with him not to leave her behind. Concerned, he kneels down, carefully examining her injury. Without a word, he pulls a first aid kit from his bag and gently wraps a bandage around her foot. Minamo watches him in quiet surprise. When she asks if he has prepared the kit in advance, he simply replies that he knows her well. She is always getting into trouble. Touched by his thoughtfulness, she suddenly realizes that despite everything, he has always been looking out for her. Once her ankle is secured, he urges her to start walking again. She obeys, but after only a few steps, she hesitates before taking his hand more firmly. With a slightly troubled expression, she mentions that while she can walk, the pain still lingers. It is a subtle hint, but he understands. With a sigh, he moves closer, allowing her to lean on him for support. As they walk through the bustling streets, Minamo grows increasingly aware of the people around them. She hesitates before voicing her concern, mentioning that others might misinterpret their closeness. Sakai, trying to be unfazed, replies that it is just hand-holding, nothing more. His casual attitude only deepens Minamo's uncertainty about her own feelings. Before she can dwell on it further, an unexpected interruption shatters the moment. A girl named Akari suddenly appears before them, her eyes widening in shock at the sight of their interlocked hands. Her frown is immediate, and within seconds, she bursts into laughter, her voice tinged with amusement and something unspoken. Feigning disbelief, she declares that the scene before her is something worth capturing on camera. Sakai, flustered, attempts to explain himself while picking up the item she has dropped. However, Akari swiftly snaps at him, ordering him not to touch her belongings. She accuses him of being inappropriate, insisting that Minamo must have felt uncomfortable. Her words sting, making Sakai flinch. Having said her piece, Akari turns to leave. In a desperate attempt to stop her, Sakai instinctively reaches out, only to accidentally grab her chest. The moment freezes in horror before Akari reacts, swinging her bag with full force and smacking him in the face. Minamo quickly steps in, attempting to mediate. Both she and Sakai simultaneously blame the other for initiating the hand-holding, much to Akari's annoyance. With a scowl, she tells them to stop misleading people and walks away. As Akari disappears from view, both Sakai and Minamo are left standing in embarrassed silence. Neither expects to hear that the other feels nothing from the situation. Meanwhile, out of sight, Akari collapses onto the pavement. Reaching into her bag, she pulls out an old childhood photograph of herself and Sakai. Her fingers trace the edges, relief washing over her. He isn't actually in a relationship with Minamo. A guilty pang strikes her as she recalls how cruelly she has treated him. But then she scoffs, remembering his horny monkey moment. For now, she will continue acting the way she always has, but deep down, she knows the truth. Sakai Yonosuke has never stopped meaning something to her. Akari and Sakai attended the same school and often found themselves in each other's presence, despite their frequent arguments. One day, as fate would have it, Akari happened to buy the same juice as Sakai. It was purely coincidental, but upon noticing the similarity while standing next to him in class, irritation immediately flared within her. It felt as though he was copying her, making her feel foolish for no reason. Sakai remained unfazed, dismissing the accusation as baseless. That specific drink had always been his choice since joining the school, and he saw no reason to change his habits over such a trivial matter. Their disagreement quickly escalated, neither willing to back down. Before the tension could spiral further, their frustration lingered, fueling their silent feud. As Sakai stood there, an unexpected wave of nostalgia surfaced. Memories of childhood, when he and Akari had been inseparable, drifted into his mind. Hours had been spent together, sharing secrets, playing games, and laughing without a care. It became impossible not to wonder when things had changed so drastically, or what had caused the shift in their relationship. Akari, too, found herself lost in thought. The way Sakai treated her now remained a mystery. Once they had looked out for each other as the closest of friends, yet now their interactions had become little more than a series of quarrels. The moment when things had started to go wrong eluded her, but the undeniable truth remained. They were no longer the same. Seated in the same row, Akari cast a sideways glance at Sakai. A quiet thought crossed her mind. If he truly wanted to be friends again, she would accept it. Strangely, at that exact moment, Sakai was having the same thought. A few moments later, Sakai reached for his juice bottle, feeling thirsty. At the same time, Akari did the same. Unbeknownst to them, in their earlier frustration, their bottles had been accidentally swapped. As they simultaneously took a sip, something felt off to Sakai. The bottle seemed emptier than it should have been. Realization struck. This was not his drink. He tries warning her, but it is already too late. Akari froze as her mind processed the situation. If they had both drunk from the same bottle, it meant an indirect kiss. A deep shade of red spread across her face as she struggled to grasp the implications. Sakai, noticing her reaction, attempted to dismiss the situation with nonchalance. It was insignificant, something best forgotten. Akari, however, refused to let it go so easily. Her frustration only grew at his casual response. If he did not care, then she would make sure that he did. Hearing this, Akari felt foolish for being so shocked over something he found unremarkable. Realizing the situation, she immediately began teasing Sakai, her smirk growing mischievous as she called him a cherry boy, clearly enjoying the chance to mock him. His face flushed red with embarrassment as he glared at her, but she only laughed at his reaction. However, as her laughter subsided, something he said caught her off guard. When Sakai casually remarked that kissing was nothing special, just a normal part of life, Akari's amusement faltered. Her eyes widened and an unexpected sting pricked at her chest. She had wanted to be his first. Her expression tensed for a brief moment, and though she forced a smirk back onto her face, her eyes betrayed a hint of moisture. It was an involuntary reaction, one she hadn't expected herself. Before she could fully process her own emotions, Sakai smirked, flipping the situation back on her. Bringing up the indirect kiss once again, he eyed her knowingly and questioned whether she had any experience with such things. She stared at him in shock, unable to believe he had asked that so directly. Quickly recovering, she refused to be outdone, confidently declaring that she did. With a smirk, she turned the insult back on him, calling him a virgin. Sakei's expression darkened, his offense clear as his face turned an even brighter shade of red. Crossing his arms, he dismissed the significance of kissing, insisting that it was nothing special, just child's play. His tone attempted to sound experienced and unaffected, though it was obvious he was flustered. Wanting to prove his point, he boldly claimed his kisses were out of this world, stating it with complete confidence as if it were an undeniable fact. Akari immediately narrowed her eyes, her skepticism evident. She did not believe him for a second, and called him out for making such an exaggerated claim. Without hesitation, Sakai dared her to prove him wrong, his words carrying the weight of a challenge. Refusing to back down, she accepted, declaring that she was not afraid to put his claim to the test. As they stood there, tension thick in the air, Sakai noticed something. Akari was trembling. His confidence wavered just enough for him to see through his bravado. She smirked, stepping closer. "You're lying," she teased, eyes narrowing. Akari stiffened but refused to back down. Their battle tingles, she shot back, though her voice was less sure. Sakai was unsure of this entire situation. "Have you actually done this before?" he asked, tone laced with curiosity. His response was delayed, a hesitation. Then, with a quiet exhale, he finally admitted, "I lied." Akari blinked, surprised by the unexpected honesty. For a moment, she softened. Instead of laughing at him like he expected, she took a step closer. "I know," she murmured. "I already realized it." The moment was abruptly interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Just as things grew tense between them, Akari suddenly lost her footing, slipping and landing on the ground with a light thud. Sakai looked down at her, amusement flickering in his gaze. Clumsy, reckless, and incapable of staying out of trouble, some things never changed. As she sat on the floor, she looked up at him, her mind still reeling. The truth was, she had wanted to be his first. Even if she laughed at him now, even if she mocked him for being inexperienced, the sting in her chest wouldn't go away. Sakai was quick to comment how she is still the same Akari he knew from way back then. This response welcomed a punch to the gut, and Akari stormed off. Shia was just glad she found them before things got out of hand. She needs to keep her guard up around Akari, it seems. Minamo stood out at school for her lively and cute demeanor, and her size added to her striking presence. Akari, on the other hand, was known for her striking beauty and impeccable sense of style. Their combined charm made them the most popular girls in school, and almost everyone wanted to be their friend. Meanwhile, two boys approached Sakai, teasing him about his close relationship with the two most popular girls. They pointed out that Minamo and Akari were his childhood friends, to which Sakai responded with a hint of annoyance. He clarified that there was nothing special about it, emphasizing that the only reason they were close was because they lived near him. Still, the boys persisted, calling Sakai incredibly lucky. They eagerly asked if he often spent time with the girls outside of school or checked up on them frequently. Sakai, growing increasingly frustrated, denied it, insisting that he had never viewed them as anything more than friends. Unbeknownst to him, Minamo overheard the conversation and caught every word, including his dismissive remarks. Without missing a beat, she stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him in a tight hug. With a cheerful voice, she declared that they had always been incredibly close, ever since childhood. The boys, witnessing this, began to argue that such behavior was far from typical among friends. Embarrassed, Sakai quickly pulled away from her embrace, but Minamo remained unfazed. She casually asked him for his homework, as though nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Sakai, still flustered, warned her not to cling to him in school, reminding her that the boys would continue talking if she did. Instead of listening, Minamo suddenly sat on his lap, causing the entire class to erupt in whispers and murmurs. The sight of it sparked a flurry of comments, and Sakai's face turned bright red with embarrassment. He immediately told her to return to her seat, but Minamo refused, assuring him that it wouldn't take long. Just as the tension grew, another boy stepped forward, insisting that Minamo should get off him. He pointed out that if Sakai truly felt uncomfortable, it meant he acknowledged her as the opposite sex, which made him appear like a pervert. Minamo, maintaining her composure, calmly reassured them that her closeness with Sakai was entirely normal, as they had always been this way. Sakai, unable to avoid the situation any longer, sighed in defeat and agreed with her, urging her to at least finish her homework quickly. At that moment, Akari happened to pass by and immediately commented on the scene, reminding them that they were in high school and needed to behave more decently. Her eyes locked onto Sakai as she warned him that if they continued like this, rumors would spread throughout the school. Frustration grew in her voice as she turned her attention to Minamo, scolding her for the behavior. Sakai, feeling protective, instantly became defensive, but Minamo, playing the innocent card, insisted that she was only doing her homework and saw no issue with the situation. Akari, unconvinced, argued that Minamo could have easily done her homework anywhere else. To make her point, she stepped forward, grabbed Minamo's hand, and tried to pull her away, but Minamo stood firm, refusing to move. She calmly stated that the level of closeness between her and Sakai was entirely normal. This made Akari pause for a moment before making a bold move. She sat down on Sakai's other leg, a move that made the boys around them burst into shock and teasing remarks. They gleefully commented on the sight of two of the most beautiful girls sitting on Sakai's lap, making Sakai's embarrassment reach new heights. Akari, now comfortably seated, casually announced that she had homework to do as well. Overwhelmed by the situation, Sakai tried to insist that both of them should do their work at their own seats, but he felt trapped, unable to escape the chaos. Minamo, sensing that Akari wasn't about to back down, suggested that Akari might have feelings for Sakai, yet she was sitting on his lap without even writing a word. She then admitted that even she was beginning to feel uncomfortable with the situation as each of Sakai's movement was causing reverberations to her whole body. Sakai, unable to hold his frustration any longer, reached his breaking point. He let out a loud shout, expressing his exasperation and announcing that he could not tolerate this anymore. Without another word, he forcefully pushed both Minamo and Akari off his lap and stood up. Without looking back, he walked away, leaving both girls sitting in stunned silence. As they watched him go, an unexpected sense of sadness began to settle over them, neither fully understanding the emotions that had taken root. Sakai stands in a crowded train, gripping a handle tightly to maintain his balance as it sways with every movement. The space around him is packed, and his eyes wander across the sea of people until they settle on a woman standing directly in front of him. From behind, she appears elegant, her posture graceful, and her attire impeccable. The aura of poise around her immediately captures his attention. Though he does not recognize her, something about her presence makes him feel as though he should look out for her amidst the packed train. As the train jerks forward, the woman turns around and Sakai's eyes widen in shock when he realizes that it is none other than Minamo. She greets him with a bright, cheerful "hey," as if their meeting in such a place is the most natural thing in the world. Sakai, however, is caught completely off guard, yet not expected to run into her here. Minamo smiles warmly at him and casually remarks that they should have invited Akari along as well. She speaks as if unaware that their sudden encounter might be awkward for him. Curiously, she tilts her head and asks where he is headed. Still reeling from the unexpected meeting, Sakai replies that he is going to the bakery because of a sale. Upon hearing this, Minamo's eyes light up with excitement, and she eagerly exclaims that she too is on her way to the bakery to buy some bread. She clasps her hands together, calling it such a coincidence. Sakai, however, does not seem as thrilled by her reaction. A slight frown appears on his face as he regards her, his expression conveying that her excitement seems somewhat out of place. With a soft, exasperated sigh, he points out that this is not a coincidence at all, noting that since they live in the same neighborhood, it is entirely normal for them to visit the same bakery. There is nothing particularly special about it. Changing the subject, Sakai warns Minamo to be careful while standing in the train as it may sway unpredictably, causing her to lose her balance. Just as the words leave his mouth, the train lurches forward, and before she can steady herself, Minamo stumbles toward him, landing directly in his arms. His entire body goes rigid, and he quickly stiffens. Flustered, he hastily tells her not to cling to him. Minamo, however, simply looks up at him with wide, innocent eyes and insists that she cannot help it. With the train so packed, she has no choice but to hold onto him for support. Sakai, now acutely aware of how close they are standing, realizes that their bodies are pressed together. To anyone observing, it would seem as though they are embracing. His breath grows uneven as he tries desperately to maintain his composure. Minamo, noticing his discomfort, curiously asks if he is experiencing motion sickness. Sakai immediately shakes his head, denying it, and tries to act as though everything is normal. However, Minamo refuses to let the matter go. She leans in slightly, her breath brushing against his ear as she speaks softly. Sakai flinches, his face turning even redder. He quickly tells her to stop speaking so close to him, but Minamo merely smiles and replies that she cannot help it. Then, without warning, she reaches out and gently cups his ears in an attempt to calm his supposed motion sickness. Overwhelmed and mortified, Sakai frantically tries to stop her, but Minamo shows no signs of backing away. Instead, she looks into his eyes with a completely innocent and sincere expression, making him feel even more flustered. Unable to handle the situation any longer, Sakai, driven by instinct, suddenly wraps his arms around her in a tight embrace. His actions are not out of affection, but out of a desperate need to hide his face from her, to shield his blushing cheeks from her gaze. Minamo, however, simply leans into him, resting her head against his chest, as if this is the most natural thing in the world. Meanwhile, in his mind, Sakai repeatedly reminds himself that she is just a childhood friend, nothing more, nothing less. This doesn't stop his heart from thumping so loud that he fears Shio might hear it. In an attempt to hide this, he distances from her only to see that her entire face is bloodshot. Unable to tolerate this any longer, Sakai asks her to leave the next station. Without a word, they exit the train, leaving Minamo momentarily confused. She asks why they got off when the bakery is still far away. However, he remains silent and instead walks to a nearby vending machine, where he buys a can of cola. Turning toward her, he hands her the drink, mistaking her for being sick. He recalls how, in the past, she would always drink cola to soothe herself whenever she felt nauseous. Minamo's eyes widen in surprise before softening with gratitude. She thanks him sincerely for remembering such a small detail about her. Then, without warning, she leans closer and rests her head gently against his chest, claiming it helps her recover faster this way. The rain begins suddenly, catching Sakai off guard. Without hesitation, his umbrella is opened, and he remarks to himself how unexpected the downpour it is. The sky, once clear, is now covered in thick, dark clouds, and the rain falls heavily, soaking everything in its path. He had not anticipated this sudden change in weather and stands still for a moment, observing the wet streets and the people scrambling for shelter. Wanting to reach his destination quickly, he decides to take a shortcut, steering clear of the deep puddles forming on the pavement. As he turns into a narrow street, his eyes fall upon a familiar figure. Akari. She stands there, drenched, her soaked clothes clinging to her and her discomfort clearly visible. In the process of removing her wet tights, she assumes no one is around, but as she does so, she notices Sakai standing nearby, staring at her in shock. The realization of being seen in such an embarrassing state makes her face flush red with humiliation. She hadn't expected anyone to be there, least of all him. Sakai, equally startled, quickly averts his gaze, his heart racing. He does not want to make the situation worse, but he cannot simply ignore what he's just seen. Meanwhile, overwhelmed by frustration and helplessness, Akari lowers herself onto the stairs of a nearby building. She pulls her knees close to her chest, her shoulders trembling, not just from the cold, but from the emotions welling up inside her. Unable to hold back, she lets out a small sob, her tears mixing with the rain. She has no umbrella, no way to protect herself, and the entire situation feels utterly miserable. Noticing her distress, Sakai hesitates before finally approaching her. Despite their strained relationship, he cannot leave her like this. With a sigh, he extends his umbrella toward her, offering her shelter. His voice is calm but firm as he suggests she step under it. Instead of accepting his kindness immediately, Akari stiffens, her pride preventing her from showing weakness. She crosses her arms, making it clear she does not want his pity. Sakai frowns, slightly taken aback. He had expected at least a small word of gratitude, but instead, she acts as if accepting help from him is beneath her. Feeling offended, he considers walking away and leaving her to deal with the situation alone. Just as he turns to go, however, Akari suddenly reaches out, stopping him. Her voice, though hesitant, carries a hint of desperation as she tells him she will accept his offer, but only because he insistent. As they walk together, the awkwardness is palpable. Once inseparable as children, they now struggle to hold a normal conversation. Years of arguments and misunderstandings have created a rift, making it difficult to act as they once did. Akari, still irritated, thinks of Sakai as a shameless pervert. She cannot forget that he saw her in such an embarrassing moment. To regain control of the situation, she begins issuing instructions, telling him to walk slowly and lower the umbrella so the rain does not drip on her face. Her tone is demanding, almost scolding. Sakai cannot shake the feeling that Akari resents him. He wonders if she truly hates him now, if their friendship is beyond repair. His thoughts drift to the past, when she had been much cuter, kinder, warmer, and playful. Nothing like the cold, distant girl beside him now. As if sensing his thoughts, Akari suddenly warns him not to look at her. Her voice is sharp, filled with suspicion, as if expecting him to sneak another glance. Annoyed by the accusation, Sakai sighs and tells her to stay calm, reminding her that he's the one helping her. Akari glares at him, her frustration evident. Despite knowing he is being kind, she cannot erase the memory of him seeing her underwear. No matter how much time passes, she cannot help but associate him with that embarrassing moment. Yet despite her irritation, she unexpectedly pulls him closer. The rain is getting heavier, and she insists he stay near so they can both remain dry. In an uncharacteristic act of care, she pulls a napkin from her pocket and offers it to him, telling him to dry himself. Sakai, too preoccupied with their awkward situation, has not even noticed he's getting wet. When he makes no move to take the napkin, Akari frowns and scolds him for being careless, calling him stupid. Slightly irritated, Sakai retorts that she is the one who is difficult to understand. Akari ignores his remark and suddenly grabs the umbrella handle, stating she will hold it instead. Sakai, surprised, warns her to be careful and not get wet in the process. Akari responds confidently, assuring him she knows what she is doing. Then smirking, she reminds him that when they were kids, he used to be much smaller than her. Her teasing tone almost makes him nostalgic, but he quickly shakes the thought away. As they continue walking, their conversation turns into playful bickering. Their words are sharp, yet there is an underlying familiarity. Just as the tension starts to ease, a car suddenly speeds past them, splashing water everywhere. Before Akari can react, she is dangerously close to being drenched. Acting on pure instinct, Sakai lunges forward, pulling her into his arms to shield her. The moment is brief, but for a second, everything else fades away. Akari, still in shock, clings to him as she processes what just happened. When she finally looks up, there is a hint of gratitude in her eyes. Softly, she thanks him, her voice lacking its usual hostility. Sakai, holding her close, wonders if things between them will ever improve, if they could ever go back to how they used to be. In an effort to close the gap, he tells her that despite the weather, he is happy to have walked with her today. Hearing this, Akari's cheeks flush slightly and she looks away. The moment is fleeting, but both feel a strange warmth in their chests. However, due to the car, Akari's clothes have become even wetter and are shown in the underwear. Realizing this, she quickly moves away from him, accusing him of indecent behavior. Sakai tries clearing his name, but it doesn't seem as if she is going to believe him. Minamo is at home savoring the sweets she recently bought. The bakery had a sale and she took full advantage, purchasing an abundance of treats. Wanting to share them, she decides to take some to Akari's house as Sakai is not home. Carefully packing them, she heads over. As usual, she bypasses the front door and climbs in through the window, an entrance they always used. Akari is sitting on her bed, just next to the window. She appears unusually quiet, holding her cat plushie in her arms. Curious, Minamo pulls back the curtain and peers inside. Akari, unaware of her presence, is staring at a picture of Sakai on her phone, speaking softly to herself. She wonders aloud how she could ever confess her feelings to him. More than anything, she wishes things could return to the way they used to be between them. Before Akari can continue her internal monologue, she sees Shio at the window and is startled. A sudden interruption causes Akari to jump in surprise, her face flushing with embarrassment as she realizes she's been caught in a vulnerable moment, lying carelessly on her bed. Annoyed, Akari quickly chastises Minamo, saying she should at least knock before barging in. Minamo, however, simply shrugs it off, reminding Akari that she always comes in through the window since it's usually left open. Ignoring Akari's complaints, Minamo pulls out the sweets she brought and offers them. Without much hesitation, they both begin munching on the sweets. As they eat, Akari, feeling compelled to explain herself, hastily justifies the photo on her phone. She insists that it's not what Minamo thinks, that she doesn't like Sakai, and that there's no hidden meaning behind it. After all, there's no way Akari could like him, especially since he's rude, lame, and just a hopeless pervert. Akari hesitates for a moment before, almost quietly, admitting that sometimes Sakai can be kind to her. Minamo, a little taken aback by Akari's admission, hides her true reaction and keeps her expression neutral. She calmly asks, "Do you like him?" Akari's response is immediate and sharp. She denies it vehemently, saying she doesn't like him at all. In fact, she adds with some conviction that she hates him. Minamo, unimpressed, points out the contradiction. Just a moment ago, Akari had said she wanted to get along with him, and now she's claiming to hate him. Akari, flustered, tries to explain herself, saying that she only wants to get along with him as a friend, but only if he's willing to do the same. Minamo offers her opinion. Sakai would certainly be more attractive if he acted more gentle. Akari is caught off guard by Minamo's bluntness and is momentarily lost in her thoughts. She quickly tries changing the subject, but just as she tries to distract her by picking up her phone to show a video, her entire search history about childhood love is dominating the screen. Before Minamo can react, Akari accidentally throws her phone, which lands directly on Minamo's face. Akari gasps, immediately apologizing and rushing out to get an ice pack for her, but the moment she opens the cupboard, a cascade of photo albums spills onto the floor. Surprised, Minamo bends down to examine them. To her shock, each album contains pictures of Sakai. She's stunned she had no idea how deep Akari's feelings for Sakai ran. Unable to resist her curiosity, Minamo asks Akari about the photos. Akari brushes it off, claiming that Sakai is just the type to take pictures everywhere, but Minamo is unconvinced. She points out that if that were true, why would Akari have printed and stored these photos herself? Akari shrugs nonchalantly, saying they're a waste and that she plans to give them to her aunt. Minamo hesitates, unsure whether to push further. But recalling their old promise to always share their secrets as best friends, she feels disappointed. Determined, she asks Akari outright what she truly feels for Sakai. Akari's response is defensive and quick. She insists she hates him, raising her voice in frustration. She rants about how Sakai has always been rude to them and never notices when they dress up. Despite years of friendship, she complains he never sees them as women. Minamo listens intently, totally agreeing with Akari's frustrations. She shares her own grievances, explaining that Sakai always treats her like a kid. To emphasize her point, she recalls the time he gave her a dinosaur plushie, even though she's already in 9th grade. Akari adds her own comment, remembering how cheeky he can be, and they share a rare moment of camaraderie, venting their mutual frustrations about Sakai's behavior. The two of them, despite their differences, find common ground in their complaints. Unaware that Sakai is standing outside the room with the intent to return the handkerchief. Hearing everything, he turns around to leave but quickly enters when he hears a scream. He realizes he is overstepping as they were just changing clothes due to spilled drink. Sakai strolled along the street, sporting sunglasses in order to stay undercover. However, his black attire was having the opposite effect. He eventually found his way into a small, tucked-away shop and tried to quickly leave the shop as soon as possible. Clutching in his hands a manga, the title made him feel a strange thrill. How can my childhood friend be this cute? A widely popular series, though deep down he knew that the events described in the book would never manifest in real life. Still, he couldn't help but wonder if someday it would come to fruition. Clutching the book tightly, he turned to leave the store. However, his thoughts scattered when, to his shock, he spotted Minamo and Akari in the mall, right in front of him. He reflexively hid the book under his shirt and tried to pretend as if he didn't know them. But they recognized him instantly. Sakai froze in place, but it was too late to escape. Akari, quick on her feet, reached out and pulled his sunglasses off. Sakai immediately went stiff, knowing he had no way out. The girls blinked in unison, studying him from head to toe. "What are you doing here, dressed like that?" Akari asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Sakai didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure what to say. His disguise felt foolish now that they had seen through it. Minamo shrugged, unfazed by the tension. "I was looking for a cooking book," she said casually, while Akari added, "I'm grabbing a fashion magazine." They exchanged a brief glance, but Sakai couldn't shake the feeling that they were scrutinizing him a little too closely. A moment of silence passed before Akari's gaze flickered to the bag in his hands. "What did you buy?" she asked, voice full of suspicion. Sakai's heart skipped a beat. His fingers tightened around the book hidden inside his jacket, but before he could think of a way to lie, panic bubbled to the surface. "Nothing," he blurted out. He took an awkward step back, trying to escape. But Minamo and Akari weren't going to let him off so easily. They suggested to go home together with a cheerful and unsuspecting tone. Sakai felt trapped. The moment was slipping from his control. His nervousness only seemed to fuel the girls' curiosity, and after sharing a quick glance, the girls flanked him. Minamo grabbed him and Akari pulled out the comic book. Akari, without missing a beat, read the title aloud. "How can my childhood friend be this cute?" Her voice was dripping with amusement. Minamo knew about this as he had its previous copies too. She found it under the bed when she was trying to lie down. Sakei's face flushed red as he stood frozen, unable to come up with a defense. His secret was out, and there was no escaping it. As they are both lost in their delusion, hoping that he is thinking of them while reading this, Sakai quickly tells them he knows the difference between fiction and reality. The morning light streamed softly through the curtains, but Sakai remained lost in slumber. His room was quiet, the only sound being the occasional rustle of sheets as he shifted in bed. Across from him, Minamo sat at his study table, completely absorbed in the pages of the romantic comedy book she found. Her fingers lightly traced the words, and the emotional climax of the story tugged at her heart. The boy in the book had finally confessed his feelings to his childhood friend, and the moment was so tender, so raw, that she couldn't help but feel a tightness in her chest. Her gaze blurred as tears began to well up unbidden. She wiped at her eyes but couldn't stop the emotions from spilling over. The words on the page seemed to resonate deeply with her own desires she had buried for so long, waiting for the right moment, the right person. The boy in the story had finally admitted what he felt, but Minamo wondered if she, too, could ever have the courage to express her own feelings. Her heart ached with longing as she closed the book, her fingers lingering on the cover. A soft sigh escaped her lips as she turned to look out of the window, her thoughts wandering. One day, she whispered to herself, my own romantic comedy will happen. Just like in the story. She stood up slowly, the weight of the moment heavy on her heart. With a quiet resolve, she left the room through the window, her steps soft and unhurried. However, when she arrived at Sakai's house later, hoping to walk to school with him, his mother told her he had already left. Her shoulders sagged as disappointment settled over her. She had hoped for just a brief moment to see him before they parted for the day, but now he was gone. As she walked toward school, lost in thought, a familiar figure ahead caught her eye. Her heart leaped in her chest. Sakai. A mischievous smile tugged at the corner of her lips as she quickened her pace, eager to surprise him. But when she finally reached him, his response was far colder than she had anticipated. Sakai sighed heavily and turned to her with a frown. "Stop sneaking up on me like that," he muttered, his voice filled with frustration, especially in public. Minamo was taken aback. His tone was so serious, so unamused, that it knocked the wind out of her playful spirit. Instead of retreating, she teased, "You're so shy, it's cute," trying to lighten the mood. But Sakai didn't bite. His expression remained unreadable as he continued walking, ignoring her playful remark. A quiet, sinking feeling settled in Minamo's chest, but she refused to let it show. At school, her mood only grew darker. Sitting at her desk, she slumped forward, resting her head on her folded arms. Akari, noticing her friend's unusual demeanor, approached with concern. "Minamo, what's wrong?" Akari asked gently, her voice soft and understanding. Minamo hesitated, unsure if she should confide her worries. She didn't want to seem needy, but she couldn't help it. "It's Sakai," she finally admitted. "He was so cold this morning. I don't know if I did something wrong, but he seemed like he hated me." Akari studied her for a moment before responding, her tone reassuring. "Minamo, you're overthinking it. Sakai's moods are always all over the place. He's probably just having a bad day or something." Minamo nodded, but her unease didn't entirely dissipate. She couldn't help but wonder if she had somehow messed things up with him. Later that afternoon, Minamo made her way to the gymnasium. She knew Sakai was assigned to clean it that day, and she had planned to wait for him there, hoping to talk things out. However, unbeknownst to her, his duty had been reassigned and she slept while waiting for him. She woke up late at night only to discover that it was dark and the door locked. The gym was as empty as ever. She checked her phone and discovered it had died. A wave of panic surged through her as she realized that no one was around to hear her calls for help. She banged her fists against the door, but it was locked. She was trapped. Sitting down on the cold gym floor, Minamo's thoughts turned inward. She began to recall the loneliness she'd once felt as a child when she was left alone at home. Even the food that was especially left for her tasted bland. Her heart ached with the isolation she had endured, and she found herself wishing for someone like Sakai, to bring her comfort. Her eyes fluttered shut as she quietly prayed, hoping that anyone, would come to her rescue. And then, as if on cue, the door creaked open. A gust of cool air rushed in, and standing in the doorway was none other than Sakai. Minamo's heart skipped a beat. She stared at him, wide-eyed as relief flooded her chest. "Sakai," she exclaimed, her voice full of disbelief. He stepped inside, his usual calm demeanor intact. "I knew you were here," he said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Minamo stood still, momentarily taken aback by Sakai's intuition. He had known she was waiting for him, effortlessly piecing together her intentions. The realization left her both surprised and oddly flustered. Without dwelling on it, Sakai gestured toward the door, urging her to leave. The concern in his voice was subtle, yet unmistakable. Her mother was worried. For a brief moment she hesitated, caught between relief and an unspoken longing. She had expected a different reaction, but once again, he was there to pull her from an unexpected situation. She is again taken back to that lonely memory and remembers how he had saved her back then as well. He brought meatballs to her house and told her to come to him whenever she felt lonely. The warmth of that memory fills her heart, and she finds herself smiling. She realizes that Sakai has always been the hero of her life. Gathering her courage, she finally expresses her feelings, telling him that for a moment she thought he hated her. He raises an eyebrow and asks why she would think such a thing, not revealing the fact that he was avoiding her since he had gotten extra conscious of her due to reading the latest volume of the childhood romance book. Before they leave, a sudden misstep causes Minamo to stumble. In a reflexive motion, she grasped at Sakai's sleeve, pulling him down with her. The fall was abrupt, leaving them both momentarily stunned. He responded with an immediate reprimand, his usual composure cracking just enough to reveal his exasperation. Yet rather than reacting to his words, Minamo simply watched him. Her gaze softened, and with a quiet resolve, she let her thoughts surface. She wanted more time, just a little longer, with just the two of them. Elsewhere, Akari wandered through the park, her phone in hand, the unanswered messages fueling her unease. The absence of a response unsettled her, though the reason remained unknown. As she continued her search, Minamo's understanding of her relationship with Sakai inched closer to something she had yet to fully grasp. It is late at night, and the gym room remains dimly lit. Sakai and Minamo are still inside, their presence lingering longer than intended. Eventually, Sakai remarks on the time, noting that their mothers must be worried by now. Checking his phone, he quickly scans the screen, noticing a string of messages from Akari. Without hesitation, he mentions it to Minamo before urging her to run home ahead of him, hoping she will make it back quickly. Startled by his sudden insistence, Minamo hurriedly rises to her feet, only to pause mid-motion. A brief silence follows before she absent-mindedly wonders aloud about food, asking if it happens to be hamburger day. Her question lingers, momentarily breaking the tension. Rather than pressing her to leave, Sakai makes a passing remark, assuring her that he has already informed everyone of her whereabouts. There seems to be no harm in staying a little longer. Deciding to remain, he pulls himself up onto the wall, settling into a more comfortable position. A question follows as he glances in her direction, wondering if there is something she wants to talk about. Minamo meets his gaze with hesitation, her expression flickering with uncertainty. For a moment, she seems to consider speaking, but the words never leave her lips. The hesitation does not go unnoticed. With a slight sigh, Sakai asks again, though the response remains unchanged. She insists there is nothing to discuss, only that she wants to stay for a little longer. Sakai leans back slightly, acknowledging her choice without argument. An awkward silence follows, stretching between them. Neither of them speaks, the weight of unspoken thoughts settling in the air. After some time, Sakai eventually breaks the stillness, suggesting that they should leave if there is nothing left to do. Minamo, however, refuses. A hint of exasperation crosses his face as he suddenly points out how unusual her behavior has been. Typically, she is the one clinging to his arm, making lighthearted, nonsensical remarks without hesitation. Yet now she seems distant, reserved in a way that feels unfamiliar. The shift does not go unnoticed, and curiosity prompts him to question what has changed. At his words, Minamo hesitates again before offering an explanation. His constant reminders to restrain herself in public have stayed with her, making her feel restricted. That, she admits, is the reason behind her newfound restraint. A faint trace of sadness lingers in her voice as she finally asks if he is truly okay with the way she used to behave. If he does not mind, she says, she can go ahead and do it. The remark catches Sakai off guard, though after a moment he concedes that it is fine as long as no one is watching. Encouraged by his response, Minamo slowly reaches for his hand before resting her head against his shoulder. The action surprises him, leaving him momentarily awkward. Without lifting her head, she quietly notes that he smells nice, making an offhanded observation about how he must have gone out searching for her even after already taking a bath. In response, Sakai admits that he did, explaining that he simply could not leave her alone, and after all, they have been childhood friends for as long as he can remember. Hearing this, Minamo lifts her head slightly, her expression soft. A smile forms as she voices a simple yet earnest sentiment. She wants to stay by his side for a long time. Gratitude laces her tone as she thanks him for finding her earlier, repeating her desire to remain close. Before the moment can fully settle, sudden movement interrupts the quiet atmosphere. Akari steps into the scene abruptly, stopping in her tracks at the sight before her. Shock flashes across her face as she demands to know what's going on. Without hesitation, she rushes forward, throwing her arms around Minamo in an anxious embrace. Concern seeps into her voice as she pleads with her not to disappear like that again. Then her attention shifts. The warmth in her tone fades, replaced by frustration as she turns towards Sakai, anger flickering in her expression. A reprimand follows as she reminds him of her request, to inform her as soon as Minamo was found. Yet, despite having located her 20 minutes earlier, he had failed to say anything. Before he can formulate a response, Minamo steps in, taking responsibility. The situation is explained in a quiet yet firm tone. She had locked herself in the gym room, and exhaustion had prompted her to ask Sakai for a brief moment of rest. That, she insists, is the reason behind the delay. Akari listens, her anger subsiding slightly, though confusion still lingers in her eyes. As Minamo walks away, a pause follows before Akari turns back to Sakai. A serious expression settles over her features as she finally voices the question hanging in the air. Without hesitation, she asks him directly, does he love Minamo? The words remain suspended between them, thick with tension, as the moment stretches on.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.